We are all in this together, and your vote is your power. So please make sure your voice is heard this November and register to vote at vote.gov.
Can I get an amen?
Amen. Now on with the show.
And remember, you better vote.
So by default, it affects Black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners.
But in the area of reparations for descendants of Africans enslaved, if you elected president, would you sign that bill if it came across your desk?
When I am elected president, I will sign that bill. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No. No. No.
Senator Harris, what about reparations? What about reparations, Senator Harris? Senator Harris, what about reparations? What about reparations? Senator Harris.
While marching together for justice in the civil rights movement of the 1960s, in the streets of Oakland and Berkeley, I got a stroller's eye view of people getting into what the great John Lewis called good trouble. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco.
In this campaign with Indian Americans at senior levels, which of course includes the top of the heap, our dear friend who will be the first Indian American vice president in the history of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
To the people of India and to Indian Americans all across the United States, I want to wish you a happy Indian Independence Day. On August 15th, 1947, men and women all over India rejoiced in the declaration of the independence of the country of India. Today, on August 15th, 2020, I stand before you as the first candidate for Vice President of the United States of South Asian descent. She raised us to be proud, strong Black women. Growing up, my mother would take my sister, Maya, and me back to what was then called Madras, because she wanted us to understand where she had come from and where we had ancestry. And of course, she always wanted to instill in us a love of good idli. My sister and I, we grew up celebrating Kwanzaa.
Harris's visits to India with her mother kept her connected to her roots. Her grandfather, who had strong views on humanitarian issues, worked closely with officials to reallocate refugees.
When I was 5, my parents split, and my mother raised us mostly on her own.
In 1958, a precocious 19-year-old Indian, Gopalan traveled thousands of miles from her home and family to pursue a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology in America.
She made it look easy, though it never was.
She soon became an active civil rights crusader while studying at UC Berkeley.
Like so many mothers, she worked around the clock to make it work, packing lunches before we woke up and paying bills after we went to bed.
Kamala in Hindi means lotus flower and is an important symbol in Indian culture.
Helping us with homework at the kitchen table and shuttling us to church for choir practice.
Rooted deep in the bottom of the river, very similar to Harris's Indian identity, which she wears on her sleeve. Vedika Sood, CNN, New Delhi.
What I suggest we do as African Americans is own this issue in law enforcement and then define it in the way that works for us, because it is a myth to say that African Americans don't want law enforcement. We do.
What we know in particular when you're talking about South Asian community, we're talking about the Indian community more specifically, it is a growing community in the United States in terms of its voting bloc, in terms of its participation, and I think the party knows that and knows that this is part of our collective community, and there needs to be outreach and inclusion.
And certainly you could become the first Indian senator in U.S. history, which would be quite an accomplishment.
Knock wood. She raised us to be proud, strong black women.
Distinct pleasure to introduce the first senator, and I'm not going to say this, the first senator of Indian American heritage in the history of U.S. Senate.
So it's been a really long week, and I'm really glad to be here. But I want to thank you, and my Chitti is here, my mother's youngest sister, Chinni Mahalakshmi Subhash is here, and I want to thank her. She flew in from Toronto to be with us this evening. Please, Chitti, will you wave?
Cares about the fact that we've got a bunch of young black and brown men in prison. That argument is not working.
A lot of my work around access to capital has focused on young men of color, black men and black men, knowing that, again, so many entrepreneurs, and it's when people think black men and small businesses, it's not just a barbershop.
I believe that we need to address, well, first of all, no, I don't think America is a racist country, but we also do have to speak truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it.
Best rapper alive.
Tupac.
He's not alive. You said he lives on.
But not alive. I know. I keep doing
You said, listen, West Coast girls think Tupac lives on. I'm with you. So Tupac, keep going.
Keep doing that. Who would I say? I mean, there's so many. I mean, there are some that I would not mention right now because they should stay in their lane. We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
So I know how to make a mean pot of greens. In fact, people used to ask me to make greens for them for Christmas. One year, I had so many that I had to wash that we ended up washing them in the bathtub.
Is getting the fresh turkey?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's being delivered
And so
tomorrow.
just little, 1 minute out. I have 1 minute.
Yeah.
Kosher salt, fresh ground pepper, maybe chop up a little thyme, and then you can mix it even with. Okay, so do the salt and pepper all over it, like lather that baby up, right? With on the outside in the cavity. You could also chop up, but not with the thyme, just the salt and pepper. Mix that up also with some thyme. You could even do a little rosemary if you want, under the skin with some butter before you're gonna cook it. So that butter will just melt in there. And then get a nice big bottle of cheap white wine to baste with butter. Yes, hi.
Okay.
Yes. But when you turn 18 and you're in the system, you are considered an adult, period. Without any regard to the fact that that is the very phase of life in which we have invested billions of dollars in colleges and universities, knowing that is the prime phase of life.
during which we mold and shape and direct someone to become a productive adult.
Good morning, and to all the young leaders who are here, and the youngish leaders. So here's the thing. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right? Just, there's something about and most of us, many of us went to school on the yellow school bus, right? And it's part of our experience growing up. It's part of, a nostalgia and a memory of excitement and joy of going to school, to be with your favorite teacher, to be with your best friends, and to learn. The school bus takes us there. Our school buses are fueled with diesel fuel, which contributes to very serious conditions that are about health and about the ability to learn. So when I think about what the experience should be for our children of going to school on the school bus, I think about the fact that it should be about maximizing that experience for them. The bus has Wi-Fi and even USB outlets next to every seat. I mean, come on, imagine. You can charge your phone on your way home from work. That's good stuff. Look at my bus! Oh my God, I love it. Oh wow. Wheels on the bus go round and round. What's the other thing we know about this population? And it's a specific phase of life. Remember, age is more than a chronological fact. What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid.
They are stupid.
That is why we put them in dormitories.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid.
They make really bad decisions.
We talk about the children of the community. They are the children of the community.
Do you know, okay, a bit of a history lesson. Do you know that the women's teams were not allowed to have brackets until 2022? Think about that, and talk about progress, better late than never, but progress. But you know what, just how we love March Madness, and even just now allowing the women to have brackets, and what that does to encourage people to talk more about the women's teams, to watch them. Now they're being covered, and this is the reality. People used to say, oh, women's sports, who's interested? Well, if you can't see it, you won't be. But when you see it, you realize
2 million people, 2 million women people.
you exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. I think that there's a duality to the nature of democracy.
There's a duality to the nature of democracy.
When it's intact, oh, it's so strong.
Incredible strength when it is intact.
And it's very fragile.
And incredibly fragile.
Reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
Okay.
We're looking at over 220 million Americans who just in the last several months died.
We are in the midst of a public health epidemic that has taken the lives of over 220 million Americans in just the last several months.
There is this wonderful word that has a great meaning, and it's called hypothesis.
Which means that you have an idea, and then it is well accepted, it will be tested, and then you will learn whether it was correct or not, but there will be no pride associated with the hypothesis, because after all, it was a hypothesis.
So,
The laws that have been written and are on the books to deal with this issue of privacy are laws that developed primarily, and this gets back to the 20th century versus the 21st century world, right? The laws are still very much grounded in the 20th century and before. So the laws that came up around privacy were developed around literally the structure of a house. Well, what can you see from the street if you were looking through the window of that house versus what you would be able to see or take if you opened the door of that house versus what, right? What is your reason, versus what you're doing in the front yard of that house? Sure. And so what expectation of privacy do you attach to whatever is placed in that particular place as it relates to that house? So, given where we are now, so you're now no longer are you necessarily keeping those private files in some file cabinet that's locked in the basement of the house. It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud that exists above us.
There's a balance to be struck between being tough and being a bitch. Turn that off.
You know, the power I have as a prosecutor is that with a swipe of my pen, I can charge someone with a misdemeanor, the lowest level offense possible. And by virtue of that swipe of my pen, you will have to go to a courthouse and stand in line. You will have to come out of pocket and hire an attorney. You may get arrested for a few hours. You will be embarrassed in your community. You will miss time from coming onto the Google campus. All because with the swipe of my pen, I've charged you with a crime, which I may choose to dismiss 2 weeks later. It's an incredible amount of power. I learned, I think I was, 22 when I started that work. I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. And because of the swipe of my pen, that person could be arrested. They could sit in jail for at least 48 hours. They could lose time from work, and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community. All because of the swipe of my pen. Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges, but their life would forever be changed. So I learned at a very young age the power.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
The U.S. is experiencing record inflation, the worst in 30 years, way beyond expectations. OPEC didn't increase oil production. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending and your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously. But there is also a point that is important to make on the Build Back Better framework. One, it is designed to make it less expensive for working people to live. It was specifically designed to bring down the costs of childcare and increase accessibility and availability. designed to bring down the cost of elder care and make it available to all those working families that need that support and need that help. And Build Back Better is not going to cost anything. We're paying for it. And we got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously. On behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey. Here's the thing. I've been working on this issue for a very long time. And the kind of violence and danger that is associated with that trek.
Why not visit the border? Why not see what Americans are seeing in this crisis?
Well, we are going to the border. We have to deal with what's happening at the border. There's no question about that. I don't know that we're going to see listen, I've been very clear from the beginning. There's not going to be a quick fix. So we've seen progress. But the real work is going to take time to manifest itself.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
I said back in March I was going to come to the border, so this is not a new plan.
I've said I'm going to go to the border. And when are you going to the border, Vice President? The administration has asked. I'm not finished. I've said I'm going to the border. And also, if we are going to deal with the problems at the border, we have to deal with the problems that cause people to go to the border, to flee to the border. And that is the root causes. So my first trip as Vice President of the United States was to go, in terms of a foreign trip, to Guatemala, to be on the ground there, to address and to be informed of the root causes. Why are the people of Guatemala leaving? Do you have a date? I will keep you posted.
A mother who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril to come here. Why would that mother do that? I will tell you. Because she has decided for that child to remain where they are is worse. But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of our America and our values, and it's got to end.
To be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border, do not come. Do not come. And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Must be addressed.
The bill also says, quote, every individual who is a resident of the United States is entitled to benefits for health care services under this act. Not every individual who's a citizen, but every individual who's a resident. So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period. It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place, right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners.
Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
I'm sure that will be said, but we have to also agree that when the President of the United States speaks, her words are very powerful and should be used in a way that is not about belittling, much less harming anyone. And this president has, I think, never fully appreciated that responsibility. And so what we see continuously, including in the last 24 hours, is a use of his words, Donald Trump using his words, in a way that could subject someone to harm.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi, you're both together.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
He has lost his privileges and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop. Well, first of all, as a point of distinction, I believe I'm the only one who has said that she will take executive action. So mine is not just a plan with some plan for legislation. I'm actually prepared to take executive action to put in place rules that improve this situation. I also have, as part of my background and experience, working on this issue when I was Attorney General. And we put resources into allowing law enforcement to actually knock on the doors of people who were on two lists. A list where they had been found by a court to be a danger to themselves and others, and were on a list where they were precluded and prohibited from owning a gun because of a conviction that prohibited that ownership. And those lists were combined, and then we sent law enforcement out to take those guns. Because, listen, we have to deal with this on all levels. But we have to do this with a sense of urgency, and we have to act. Enough with the talk. And again, I really have to stress, lawful gun ownership, that is one thing. We're talking about something else. And we have to stop conflating and blending all these issues, because they are separate and they are different. And the bottom line is this: our children should not be in fear of going to a community festival or going to school or going with their parents shopping on a Saturday afternoon and in fear that there's going to be some mass shooters shooting up the place. And let's talk about assault weapons for a moment. Assault weapons are weapons of war. Be clear about this. Assault weapons are designed to kill a lot of people quickly. There is no reason that they should exist on the streets of a civil society. Never let anyone take your joy from you. I call myself a joyful warrior. Right? Never let anyone take your joy from you. You do what you gotta do. And isn't that a wonderful
way to live.
To know you have purpose.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that decision, to face the people I have faced, to say, I will not seek the death penalty. That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do? When I was in the position of having to decide whether or not to seek a death penalty on cases I prosecuted, I made a very difficult decision that was not popular to not seek the death penalty. History shows that, and I am proud of those decisions.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Is it just me, or what is this creature that doesn't breathe and has fish gills or something weird?
We shut down, our businesses are closed, our schools were robbed of so much. And today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threat to the Civil War. And today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
Right?
Yeah.
You know? Tails on the bus, go round and round.
Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Most of us, many of us went to school on the yellow school bus, right?